Hello, welcome everybody. The lesson for today is 8-2, Pythagorean theorem and simplifying square roots. We'll combine two lessons together, but this video will only cover the second part of the lesson. So the only thing that I'm really going to hit on today is the simplifying square roots. So make sure you have your title. You can put the entire lesson title because I'll continue this in class the next day. So 8-2, Pythagorean theorem and simplifying square roots. We're going to start with a little story today. That story is about three guys who got in trouble. They tried to rob a bank and they went to jail. So the jail was an interesting little picture of a jail. It looked like this. So if you can see that symbol right there, the jails we're going to talk about are jails that look like this. And we'll call them the square root jails. Dun, dun, dun. So I wonder who the culprits were. Who were the guys that got in trouble and went to jail? Well, here they are. Three fellas. And they got in trouble. So one day, one of the guys in jail said, "Hey," it's this guy right here, "I've got an idea. We can break out of this jail as long as we kind of dress up and become the same person, then we can sneak out of jail." So what they did is they did dress up to become the same guy. Like here they are. Oh, whoops. So this guy here went away. There we go. Now I got it. And he's no longer there because he put on a disguise, his good old Mr. Shaplesky disguise. So when he put on this little disguise, the Mr. Shaplesky disguise, these two guys here decided, okay, we'll kind of become the same person, and then we get to break out of jail. Well, if you notice, this lonely guy here, he's all by himself. He cannot break out of jail. So this little story is about how you're going to simplify square roots. And the idea behind it, I'll explain why it works, but the idea behind it is you're going to need two people or numbers to become the same number, and then they're allowed to break out of jail. So, how does it all work? Well, here's how it all works. Let's start with a problem, the square root of 72, and this is example 1 in your notes. Now, this is the 72 gang, and they got in trouble. There's a lot of people in this gang. We have to figure out how many people are in this gang. So the way to do that is you break it down. So what do I mean by that is you figure out two numbers that multiply into 72. Well, if you're good with your multiplication facts, this is going to be an easy task for you. If you're not, this is going to take some time and you're going to need a calculator. The two things that I know for sure that multiply to 72 are 9 times 8. So if I use my calculator, I could have divided and figured this out, but I knew that these two numbers both went into 72. So I still need to break these down because this 9 here has some more guys in this gang, and the 9 can become 3 times 3. The 8 has a bunch of people in its little sub-gang, and the 8 could be 4 times 2. And this 4 has one more little sub-gang, it's 2 times 2. So this is a factor tree of all these numbers, 3, 3, 2, 2, and 2. Now the gang called 72 can be broken down into these 3 2s, 1, 2, 3, and 2 3s, 1, 2. All of this is multiplication. And if you checked it out and you multiplied 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3, you're going to get 72. But this is the broken down gang, so you always want to try and break it down. Then, like our story with the previous slide, once you get two fellas that can dress up like each other, they're allowed to pop outside. These two guys are allowed to dress up like each other, and they can pop outside. So the 2 comes out, but notice how it's only 1 2 because they've dressed up like each other, so they're kind of like twins on top of each other. And these 2 3s come outside also. So what's left? The leftover is this little guy right there, the number 2. He still has to stay in jail because he doesn't have any disguises or friends to be able to dress up like each other. So my final answer is 2 times 3, which is 6. 6 times the square root of 2. Now let's talk about this for a moment. What is this? This is the same decimal answer as the square root of 72. Now if you do have a calculator and you type in the square root of 72, you get a decimal that's about 8.485. And 8.485 is also the same decimal as 6 times the square root of 2. Well, why don't we just use this, you might be asking yourself. Well, you could, but this is what we call a simplified version. This will be required for you when you work with this chapter. It'll also possibly be required on the ACT, so we want to be able to simplify square roots, and this is the plan. Couple comments. Why does it work? Well, let me tell you why it works. Remember this 2 and 2 that I pulled out? Well, if you know what the square root represents, 2 times 2 is 4. What is the square root of 4? It's a 2. That's why it can come out of jail, because it's a buddy, and 2 of the same numbers just become 1 when they come outside of a square root. Same thing here. This is 9. The square root of 9 is 3. That's why I pulled out a 3. So let's practice. Here's example 2, 112. Now 112 is a little bit more complicated to break down. I know it's an even number, so I'm going to go to my calculator. I'm going to do 112 divided by 2. All even numbers can be broken down into 2 times something. So it's 2 times 56. Now I might know a multiplication fact that 56 becomes, but I'm not sure. So I also know a 2 goes in there, so I use my calculator and divide by 2. And I get 28. I could just keep doing this 2 routine, but 28, that's one I remember. It's 4 times 7. And 4 is 2 times 2. So now I'll always rewrite my square root, and I'll rewrite it with the bottom of my factor tree. There's a 2. There's a 2. There's a 2. I don't have to write the 4 because the 4 was broken down. There's a 2. And this is a 7. It's the bottom of my tree. So all of these numbers that you see here are the bottom of the tree. So now what do? Well, if you want to try and pull out pairs and see if you can get the correct final answer, pause the video and give it a try. Hopefully you got it. These guys are partners. They come outside, but notice when they come outside, they just become a 2. Why? Because the square root of 4 is 2. Well, here's another 4. The square root of 4 is 2. They come outside. And then this 7, oh, he's lonely. He can't come out of jail. He stays. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times the square root of 7 is the final answer. Simplified square root. These two have the same decimal answer, but this is often easier to work with in some math problems. Last question. Well, what happens when we have variables? Well, variables are done the exact same way. I would encourage you to remember the breakdown of 8, because 8 is a very popular number. So 8 I know is 222. I would encourage you just to kind of memorize that one. If you really wanted to, you could go 4 times 2 and 2 times 2. Bottom of the tree, 222. Well, what about this x? Well, a cube means multiply it by itself 3 times. So this can be broken down into x times x times x. So I go x, x, x. If it was a power of 7, I'd have 7 x's. It's very simple. And then you circle your pairs, yank them out of the jail or the square root, circle your pairs, yank them out of the jail or the square root, so the 2 comes out, the x comes out, and the leftovers are this lonely 2 and this lonely x, so my leftovers are just the square root of 2x. This is going to be immensely helpful as you move closer to next year's math class, Algebra 2. That's how you simplify square roots. Your practice on this is a worksheet that was handed out in class. So on the worksheet, I'd like you to do problems 1 through 12 all, and try to break down every one of those and pull out pairs, and you'll find out tomorrow if you got them right. Thanks for listening.